Why do people always say to let meat rest after cooking? It is part of the cooking process. Heat is coming from the outside of the meat in your oven, grill, pan. The outer surface of the meat gets heated first and higher than the interior. When you take it off the heat, resting gives some time for the heat to equalize. The interior of the meat is still cooking and coming up to temperature. Let it. Also, while the meat is at the maximum temperature from the heat source, you are most likely to lose juices from it. By letting the meat rest, the muscle tissues absorb those juices back up. Tend to cover with foil loosely or cover it to prevent it from getting cold. Don't rest it too long. But stop cooking meat a little before the interior temperature hits your target. Let it rest, and check again in a few minutes. You'll see the interior keeps getting warmer and will reach your target temp. It is still cooking, let it sit, it retains moisture. Retired chef here. 1 carryover. The meat is still cooking after you remove it from the heat source. Resting allows the cooking to finish. For the same reason, never cook eggs all the way in the pan. Plate the eggs slightly before they are done so they finish cooking on the plate. This is why so many people make rubbery eggs. This wasn't truly understood until modernist cuisine came out. The center of the meat is supersaturated with liquid because the cooking process forces liquid toward the center. Cut into it and it bleeds all that flavor and juiciness out. Resting allows this liquid to partially redistribute back. The meat is tired and needs to relax so it can taste better. Carry over cooking is one thing, but retaining juice by letting muscles relax, popularized by modernist cuisine, was recanted by one of its writers, Chris Young. Repeated tests have shown no difference. This is one of many cooking myths that will unfortunately stick around for a while because it seems to make intuitive sense, but doesn't bear out in repeated testing. You let the meat sit for 5 minutes so when you cut into it all the juice doesn't run out. This should be the top comment. https://u2.bepia8h8 equals gso7h vo1c1x vktax. The author that initially wrote the book that said resting is good has since come out and changed his stance. Resting allows the muscle fibers to retain water that was removed from them by cooking. If you cut into it too soon, the water drips onto the plate and cannot be reabsorbed. Trust me on this one from not being a major cook or chef. Pull the meat a few degrees before it actually hits temp. The external heat will finish cooking the internal part. Let it rest, all of the juice's moisture will work itself back into the meat. If you cut it immediately, prepare for very dry piece of meat. While many people tell you to let the steak rest, I'm going to go ahead and say that letting it rest is not needed. In fact, if you cook a steak to the right temperature, letting it rest will allow it to continue cooking while you wait for the juices to get reabsorbed, so you may end up with a cut of meat that's more cooked than you wanted. And those juices will keep seeping out of the steak in the meantime, not reabsorbing any of it into the meat. I believe it's a myth that's just been around for longer than anyone can remember, and no one really cares to test it properly. Check this video out, for example. Skip to 5:23 if you just want to get to the experiment. https. It's overrated. I don't want cold meat. In large part safety. If you hold meat at 135 degrees for 20 minutes, it is generally safe to eat. If 165 or greater, it is safe without a wait. If you cook to 145 degrees, but aren't certain if you measured the middle well enough, let it sit for 5 minutes to be sure. Keep in mind, to shred pork you have to get it to reach 200 degrees or the ligaments won't fall apart. So there are different qualities you get with different meats at different temperatures. In general, juicy meat happens at lower temps, and shredding meat happens at much higher temps. I was always told it's because it's still cooking after being removed from heat. In practice, I keep it in mind for things like cooking eggs, meat, and cookies where I'm shooting for a certain degree of doneness and don't want to overshoot because of the way heat lingers. The same logic was also used when my mom, a nurse, was teaching me about treating burns while I was growing up. She insists on cold water on small burns ASAP because you are still burning for some time after it happens. Still cooking, I think about that pretty regularly tbh. It's kinda freaky. The faster you get those singed fingers chilled, the burn will be better off later. The meat is still cooking after you remove it from the heat. Letting it rest allows the cooking process to finish and distribute the liquid. Cutting it immediately will result in dry, tough meat. 5 minutes or so for thinner cuts is usually good, 10 minutes or so for thicker cuts. The theory is the moisture will reabsorb into the meat. There isn't really a lot to support the practice, as far as I know. Something, blah, blah, blah. I'm diving in as soon as it comes off the grill and hits my plate. I'm a firm believer in experimentation, so a side-by-side comparison of 2 steaks. Rest one and eat the other straight out of the pan. Report back on your findings. Yes, im from the FCK around and find out school of cooking. Im always scared to let meat rest cause then im like if I do that it'll get cold then I'll need to heat it up again, and if I heat it up again then it's gonna get overcooked. It gets tired. They say it after sex too.